welcome. This program is In the Zone. My name is Eric Schein, your host. And tonight we're going to have on Arron Russo, the producer who has done Trading Places, The Rose. He has helped produce acts like Bette Midler. He's actually worked on producing Led Zeppelin, The Who, Janis Joplin, The Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, and even bringing stars like Bette Midler to the stage and to the screen. But unfortunately, Arron Russo could not make it tonight, and I would like to go into his resume or biography a little bit later, but due to the brevity of this program, which is half an hour, I am going to introduce the guest that we will have, who Arron Russo has asked to stand in his stead, who is G. Edward Griffin, and he is the author of The Creature from Jekyll Island. And what we're going to do now is play, though, a clip, a 5-minute clip from Arron Russo's America, Freedom to Fascism. And we'll go ahead and roll the clip now, and we'll come back right after the clip.
The government works for a private bank, and the private bank works for its owners, the true masters.
The Federal Reserve is no more federal than Federal Express. I've never seen a full list of ownership for the Fed. I don't think anybody has.
Why did we give a monopoly of creating money out of thin air to a private corporation?
There is no law that requires the average American worker in the private sector to pay a direct unapportioned tax on their labor and compensation.
The Internal Revenue Code is authorized by the 16th Amendment.
There is no constitutional basis for a tax on the wages of Americans living and working in the 50 states of the Union. Period. End of argument. Nobody can know what the law is because is what the judges say the law is.
I think it should be clarified. I think government should be transparent to the people.
They're calling us tax cheats. They're calling us fanatics. I don't care what you call me, but I have one question. Where is the law? Show me the law.
All individual income tax revenues are gone before one nickel is spent on the services taxpayers expect from government.
You have to get permission from the government from almost everything. And if that is the definition of a police state, that you can't do anything unless the government gives you permission, we're well on our way.
I began to have a frightening thought. What was our own government we had to be afraid of?
Can a microscopic tag be implanted in a person's body to track his every movement? There's actual discussion about that. You will rule on that, mark my words.
The power of government has been hijacked so that the rest of us are made slaves.
What happens if your own government is using more force, more coercion on its own citizens for the purpose of achieving its political ends? Is that government engaged in terrorism?
Unfortunately, what is being sold to the American people today as Americanism, if you peel off the label, you find so much similarity to what we were fighting against when we were fighting communism and Nazism and fascism.
This is absolutely Orwellian. I mean, it's talking about Big Brother looking over your shoulder at absolutely everything you do.
Mr. Curtis, are there programs that can be used to secretly fix elections? Yes.
Benito Mussolini had a great quote about fascism. He said that fascism should be called corporatism more properly because it's the perfect merger of power between the corporation and the state. That's how we define fascism. And that's what we're seeing here.
If Americans just learned that the IRS was actually knowingly deceiving them, that would be enough for them to rise up and put a stop to it.
All the power is in the people. And to the extent that government becomes alienated from the people, does things that people don't want, power is transferred until you finally come to a police state, totalitarian state, whatever word you want to give it, where the desires of the people really have no consequence. They go out and they vote. It doesn't make any difference which candidate they elect.
This is something that people eventually, I hope, will get sick and tired of it and say, enough is enough.
Thank you, Arron. I think we're finished.
I'm sorry, Mr. Cohen, for doing that.
They can't answer, because if they answer, the American people are going to know that this whole thing is a fraud.
It's organized crime. All you do is you call the Republicans the Genoveses, and you call the Democrats the Gambinos.
Powerful stuff. I don't want to mince words or take any of the precious time that we have in this half-hour program, so I want to go ahead and bring on G. Edward Griffin, the author of The Creature from Jekyll Island, who you saw in the appearance of the quote-unquote usual suspects, and I count myself as one, of all those who are being outspoken about what is going on and has been going on in our country for a very long time. Welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, Eric. It's good to be here. I appreciate you being invited here, although I feel very inadequate to stand in the place of Arron Russo, because he's the one that really put together that magnificent program. But since he can't make it tonight, I'm glad to be here, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself and probably the reason that Arron suggested that you invite me onto the show to him for this evening. I'm basically a writer, a researcher. I've been doing this most of my life. I became interested in themes such as this back in the early 1960s, which you can figure out how old I am, actually. I'm 75 as of this year. But I've been tracking this thing since about 1961, and I've written a few books. You mentioned one of them earlier that probably is the best known among people who are pursuing this topic, and that's the one on the Federal Reserve System. I call it The Creature from Jekyll Island, a second look at the Federal Reserve System. And just as a quick explanation on that, the reason it's called The Creature from Jekyll Island is not because it's a sequel to Jurassic Park or anything like that, but Jekyll Island is a real island, and it's off the coast of Georgia, and it was on that island back in 1910 that the Federal Reserve System was conceived, and so that's the reason for the title of the book. And the book is about the Federal Reserve and its history, its origins, the nature of money, and so much more, the cause of wars, and so forth. And the connection between my work on the Federal Reserve and Arron Russo's film is kind of hard to figure out. I first met Arron, I think it was about 2 years ago, when we were both invited to speak, and we shared the platform of a We the People's conference back in Virginia. Now, the We the People organization is primarily focused on the illegality or the questionable legality of the income tax. And as you heard and saw from that trailer that was just played, much of this program that Arron put together has to do with the issue of, is the income tax actually based on law or not? And if so, what is the law? So anyway, that was the theme of the conference, and I was there on the Federal Reserve System as a sort of a tangential subject. And Arron and I met, and we had an instant friendship that developed. And I think it was at that time that Arron's interest began to move beyond the level of just the tax issue. And so we got into the Federal Reserve, and he read my book, and it was at the conclusion of that, if I'm not mistaken, that he decided that this topic was so huge that we not only have the income tax, but we have the Federal Reserve, and that the elitists have control of us indirectly through our money system. He felt so concerned about that, Eric, that he decided that he would have to do the one thing that he knew how to do best, and that's to create a film and try and put this whole story together. And I watched him evolve in that process. He invited me to be one of the experts that was interviewed, and I consented, of course, and I was in the film, as you know. But I watched the film evolve as he dug deeper and deeper into it, and he realized along the way that there was much more involved here than just a questionable income tax system and a Federal Reserve System, which is a weird duck in itself, in that it gives a monopoly to the creation of money to a group of private bankers, which most people don't realize. He said it's deeper than that, and that's, we saw the film expand under development. It didn't start out that way, but it wound up including a lot of other issues, such as the implanting of microchips, under the skin, and the growth of government in every area that you can think of, and suddenly Arron came to the conclusion that many of us had long ago, and that is that our great American system had been changed, and it was still being changed under our very noses. It was changed from a great system of freedom, individualism, where the individual had rights and they were respected by the government, and we thought that our government was our servant. And now we come out at this point in this year where all of a sudden everything's turned around, and the government is the master and the people are the servants. And that is the message that finally came out in the film, Eric, and I was so glad to see it go beyond the initial confines of just monetary issues. Because in my opinion, the money is very, very important. In fact, it may be one of the 2 or 3 most important aspects to this story. But even if we had a sound monetary system, even if we had a very low-level income tax or no income tax at all, we could still be facing the same kind of totalitarian pressures that are facing us today if we didn't understand the bigger picture. So that's my overview of how this all came out and my part in it.
Well, I appreciate that. And if you would touch on a little bit, because you're working on something else, and I think it goes to the heart of, and I guess one of the biggest things in all of this is language, or the use of language, and to define this to the probably most common denominator is the term collectivism. And if you could touch on that a little bit, because even the international, and many people refer to them as the international banksters, I did not come up with the term. It's a merger of the term bankers and gangsters. And many people refer to them as that because they operate outside the law, outside the laws of any nation, in this gray zone where they have no controls over what they do, little or any oversight over who is involved. You can look to the Rothschilds, who set the price of gold twice daily, and how this family has such power to be able to set the price of gold twice daily. And many of these other issues, but the term collectivism, and if you could touch on that a little bit, I would appreciate it.
Yes, I'd like to do that very much, because one of the things that I picked up very early in my own awakening to this picture is that words have been used against us as weapons. Words have been used to short-circuit our thinking process. And by that I mean we are stuck with using words such as liberal versus conservative, or we'd say, well, this is a right-wing philosophy or a right or left-wing philosophy, or people will say, well, the communists are versus the Nazis, and so forth. The Republicans are versus the Democrats, and we tend to choose up sides on these words. And yet, when you stop the debate and say, well, excuse me, sir, when you use the word a Republican, I'll just pull that out of thin air. What do you mean by that? And there's usually a moment of silence, and they say, well, it's a member of the Republican Party. You say, okay, well, do they have a set of beliefs? Well, of course. Well, what are those beliefs? Silence. Well, they're sort of like this, or they're sort of like that. Or I believe, and then he starts off talking about what he believes, but there is no definition of what Republicans believe. There's no definition of what Democrats believe. There's no clear-cut definition for liberals or conservatives. And certainly, when you take a look at right-wing and left-wing, you find out that the people at the extremes of those of that spectrum, the communists are supposedly way out there on the left, and the Nazis or the fascists are supposedly way out there on the right. And then you say, well, wait a minute, what's the difference between the two? There's that moment of silence again.
Well, it's one of the oldest strategies known to man, which is to divide and conquer.
Yes, and the fact is that there's very little difference between the Nazis and this when you analyze their political philosophy. So what words should we be using? And there are only 2 words that properly define the ideological debate in the Western world. And those words are collectivism versus individualism. And I think until Americans and people all over the world become more familiar with those definitions of what those really mean, they're going to be like clay in the hands of the manipulators who will, as you say, like to get us divided. So we'll be arguing against each other and not even quite sure what we're arguing about. So collectivism.
Real quick, Mr. Griffin, one thing that they do is use our First Amendment rights to assemble against us through fear and terror, force us to assemble into unions and associations, parties, and more, and then go ahead and co-opt or corrupt those at the head of these organizations.
Exactly. Yeah, they know that the way to control large masses of people, in modern times at least, is not with the bayonet, but control them through the mind, through mental processes, and through social instincts. Yeah, the human being has a social instinct, and he belongs to groups and organizations, and he looks for leaders. And so the elitists have known for quite a while that all they need to do to control the masses is to control the organizations to which the masses belong. And that's pretty easy to do if you just control the head of an organization, the head of the political parties, for example. If you look at the heads of those parties, those people are really not selected or nominated by the grassroots members of the political parties at all. It's a little tight clique up at the top, and they control the members. The members don't control the head of the party. And so it doesn't take many up there. And these people have been working very diligently for years trying to get a certain group of people at the heads of all organizations, unions, political parties, church organizations, media organizations, civic clubs, and so forth. Wherever there is a significant group of people assembled and looking for leadership, you can be sure that the collectivists have made a point to put their people at the tops of that.
Well, not necessarily they're people who are working with them or taking orders, but they use defects of character and choose these people selectively, place them in, whether they be of a corporatist mind or a fascist mind or a collectivist mind, to where they are willing to oppress and suppress others so that they guarantee their own individual rights.
Well, that is true, and certainly they look for the corruptible person because they're easily controlled. But they also find great benefit in the person who thinks that collectivism is an ideal and that they really believe that what they're doing is correct. And that really gives them a lot of mileage. For example, I think we're a bit from the topic. We were talking about what happened or is happening still in the United States as we drift away from a nation based on the principles of freedom into a totalitarian system. What's actually happening, Eric, is that the American people are accepting this thing called collectivism. We've had it in small bits and dabs over the years, but every year it grows. And of late, it's almost complete. So what we have now is collectivism, and that's not surprising, therefore, that we aren't an awful lot different from what we used to call communism or fascism or Nazism, because all of those are mere variants of the same underlying philosophy, which is collectivism.
Yes, and there used to be a term known as creeping fascism, which goes to this, to where they use incrementalism to nip and tuck away a little bit, like the Administrative Procedure Act of 1947 that was passed to afford the executive branch internal administrative remedial proceedings that could not take away rights or property, that were to be remedial in nature only, to where now we have unitary government, to where each and all branches of the government have almost become trees unto themselves, where they are self-governing, self-regulating, self-propagating, and it almost takes on a biblical nature, to where the beast, with the 10 heads, you cut one off and another one grows, or two more grows in its place.
Right.
We now have the Department of Homeland Security, which is, or has by, defect or default, replaced our Department of Defense, and now our Department of Defense, although the name has not been changed, has become our Department of Offense.
Well, yes, and all of those things are tolerated by the people because they have accepted that underlying concept of collectivism. And so we've talked about it. Let's just touch very briefly as to what is it? What are the essential elements of collectivism that is now infecting our country?
Well, Edward, if I might, we have the 2-minute clip that I'd like to play, and if you could hopefully work the clip in to your discussion or your comments briefly on collectivism. Let's go ahead and roll that 2-minute clip.
Oh, the pizza clip.
Yes, and then we'll come back to you, and we'll go to some calls.
You bet.
Okay, thank you.
Pizza Palace, guaranteed hot in 30 minutes or it's free. This is Mary. May I take your order?
Hi, Mary. Yes, I'd like to order.
Is this Mr. Kelly?
Yes?
Thank you for calling again, sir. I show your national identification number is 610-204-999-8-45-54610. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I see you live at 736 Montrose Court, but you're calling from your cell phone. Are you at home?
I'm just leaving work, but I'm...
Oh, we can deliver to Bob's Auto Supply. That's at 175 Lincoln Avenue, yes?
No, I'm on my way home. How do you know all this stuff?
We just got wired into the system, sir.
Oh, well, I'd like to order a couple of your double meat special pizzas.
Sure thing. There'll be a new $20 charge for those, sir.
What do you mean?
Sir, the system shows me that your medical records indicate that you have high blood pressure and extremely high cholesterol. Luckily, we have a new agreement with your national health care provider that allows us to sell you double meat pies as long as you agree to waive all future claims of liability.
What?
Do you agree, sir? You can sign the form when we deliver, but there is a charge for processing. The total is $67 even.
$67?
Well, that includes the delivery surcharge of $15 to cover the added risk to our driver of traveling through an orange zone.
I live in an orange zone?
Now you do. Looks like there was another robbery on Montrose yesterday. You could save $48 if you ordered our special Sprout Submarine Combo and picked it up yourself. Comes with tofu sticks. Those are very tasty, sir. Good value, too.
But I want double meat.
Well, I'm sure you can afford the $67 then. You just bought those tickets to Hawaii. They weren't cheap, eh? Oh, but I see you checked out the beach bum at the library last week. Up to you, sir.
All right. I'll get the Sprout subs.
Good choice, sir. Gotta watch that waist if you're hitting the beach, eh? 42 inches. Wow. Man, I'd say tofu and sprouts is, like, required.
That's how much?
Just between you and me, there's a $3 off coupon in this month's Total Men's Fitness magazine. Your wife Betty subscribes to that, right? Anyhow, clip that and it's $19.99 even. Whoa, looks like you maxed out on all your credit cards. Bring cash, okay?
Nice clip. And that is also from the movie America, Freedom to Fascism by Arron Russo. And you can also find that on the internet by doing Google searches and using other search engines on the web. Edward, real quick, because we want to get some calls in here, that is one of the purposes of this program. It is public access, and we want to allow people to come in with some comments and or quick questions. We're going to have to, because of technical difficulties, take the questions and or comments after you go ahead and say goodnight.
Okay, let me wrap this up then, because I realize the time constraints you're under there, Eric, and I'd like to cooperate with it. Just to wrap up that thing on collectivism, it may or may not be interest to many of your viewers. Those who are interested in it, I urge them to come to our website. It's the Freedom Force website.
No, you can't go ahead and put out any website.
Well, okay, well, it's the name of the organization.
You put out some of the terms and stuff, and people can go ahead and search.
Yeah, the organization is Freedom Force, and that's easy to find.
Great.
So that is a great dissertation there. I think what needs to be done is that everybody who is interested in this topic ought to get a copy of Arron Russo's film. You can download it off the internet free if you want to. Then get a higher quality copy of it and show it to your friends. And let's spread the word and get organized to reverse this trend.
Thanks, Edward. I really appreciate you coming and stepping in for Arron. Hopefully down the road we'll be able to have you in the studio and also possibly Arron Russo, God willing. And let's go to some calls if we have any. We don't have any calls. All right, so you've seen the information, not only in the movie, the trailer. Sorry. You've seen the information that was presented in the 5-minute clip from America, Freedom to Fascism. You've seen the individuals who have represented themselves or presented themselves as usual suspects, presenting much of the information. Many of them are former federal employees, civil servants, public servants, who were intended to be, by our Constitution, provided for, well protected, so that if necessary, they could go ahead and blow the whistle and, most importantly, protect the Constitution and your constitutional rights that are embodied not only within the Constitution but also the Bill of Rights. And we've seen those under attack over the last 5 years or so, if not more. And you can go back to one of the programs that the collectivists like to use other than the banking system and financial system is the program of war. And we're seeing that going on in Iraq and Afghanistan right now. And if you're interested in finding out more information, not only about anti-war efforts that are out there, there are organizations like Cloud Pink, Cindy Sheehan, who has set up Camp Casey down in Crawford, Texas. You can search these terms and or words on your web browser on the internet, which is also a quote-unquote public trust, much like public access TV. And we ask that you do anything and everything to keep this system alive of public access TV and work to not only in your own area, but put out quality programs such as this and others like Voice of the People. If you've taken the time to watch this channel, there's another program with Edward Preston called Voice of the People, and you can also find that and do searches on the internet on search engines like YouTube or Google Video, and actually watch small clips that give you a lot of information on these topics. There are things, and I will throw out some of the terms, not only the Federal Reserve System, you can search that out, depleted uranium. Depleted uranium is a radioactive munition where they are taking radioactive material, depleted uranium, and using it in 20 millimeter, 30 millimeter, and 50 caliber munitions, tank shells, and not only firing it all over Iraq and Afghanistan, but even in the United States at test and firing ranges. We have, did we have callers? The call-in number, and I have that here, is 818. We're having a little technical difficulty, I'm sorry. That's on my end. That is the show. This is In the Zone. My name is Eric Shine. I am the host. This is the first edition. We will have more coming back at you. And again, watch other programs like In the Zone, or Voice of the People with Edward Preston. We'll be back again soon. Thank you.
Pizza Palace, guaranteed hot in 30 minutes or it's free. This is Mary. May I take your order?
Hi, Mary. Yes, I'd like to order.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes?
Thank you for calling again, sir. I show your national identification number is 610-204-9998-45-54610. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I see you live at 736 Montrose Court, but you're calling from your cell phone. Are you at home?
I'm just leaving work, but I'm...
Oh, we can deliver to Bob's Auto Supply. That's at 175 Lincoln Avenue, yes?
No, I'm on my way home. How do you know all this?